Right.
So safety rules.
Well, yeah,
Well, of
because
course, of
you
course.
want to change the whole mood of this country,
Change.
have a couple of terrorist attacks that go off.
Issue 1, Our Man in Hong Kong.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii. I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
Edward J. Snowden was a security contractor with top secret clearance until Tuesday of this week when he was summarily sacked. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Snowden triggered a federal manhunt after he had begun communicating via email with both the Washington Post and The Guardian, a British newspaper. Snowden disclosed to the papers details of a top-secret surveillance program called PRISM, operated by the National Security Agency, the NSA. Last week, Snowden surfaced in Hong Kong via video to explain his actions. Snowden denied any intent to harm U.S. security. He claimed that he blew the whistle on the NSA to prompt a public debate about the program's legitimacy and its propriety. He said that he had taken refuge in Hong Kong, the famed city and territory of the People's Republic of China. Snowden is resisting extradition to the United States. So damage assessments are already underway in the NSA and in the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Department of Homeland Security, and in other federal agencies whose secrets Snowden is positioned to compromise. Besides Snowden's decision to put himself under the jurisdiction of Hong Kong, the timing of Snowden's disclosure is of particular interest, so close to the critical summit between President Obama and Premier Xi Jinping of China. Chinese cyber intrusions were a top agenda item at the summit. So Snowden's current revelations are seen as a major ongoing diplomatic embarrassment to the U.S. and a serious undercutting of President Obama's negotiating posture vis-a-vis China. Question, what is more egregious, that Snowden did to the NSA or what the NSA is doing to American citizens? Pat Buchanan.
John, Snowden broke his contract. He violated his oath. He betrayed American secrets. And I think he damaged the security of the United States, and I think he ought to be prosecuted. The National Security Agency has spent decades, and its leaders have spent decades, defending this country. Now, what did we learn? We learned that they have access to AOL's records and Verizon's records and Yahoo's records and all the rest. But they can only access these records if they have found some connection to a terrorist and if they go to a FISA court and say we need to access those records. By and large, the guys working at the NSA are American patriots who have put in decades in the silent service, and I think there's a wholesale exaggeration. The potential for evil doing is huge as it is in the IRS, but there is no single example yet that this has been abused.
What's a FISA court?
That's the Foreign Intelligence Security Agency court, which authorizes...
What kind of a court is that?
It's a federal court which authorizes warrants to go in and...
Is that an invisible court?
It is an invisible court because they've got one or two...
Why are you talking about an invisible occult court?
Because that's the court that the National Security Agency goes to get authority...
How come the National Security Agency doesn't have cabinet rank?
It's because it's sort of like the...
Is it a spook agency?
Yeah, but it's under Clapper. It's under the whole umbrella of...
Who's Clapper?
Clapper's the head of national security overall, over the CIA.
Reporting to whom directly?
He reports directly to the NSC and the president.
Where's his office? In the White House? Right at the president's elbow?
It's a secret place.
It's in the White House. Is it in the White House?
He's the director of national security.
Is he in the White House? I believe he's in the White House.
I don't think so.
No, he is in the White House. I think he's in the
got
Pentagon.
Obama's ear, correct?
Oh, for sure.
Of course he has.
Please continue.
I have to say I agree with Pat Buchanan, and I disagree with whatever little conspiracy you're trying to lay out
I'm
here.
trying to identify the players for the public at large.
Right, exactly. Okay,
Okay,
and
go
so
ahead.
the Director of National Intelligence is probably a fairly newly created spot because during the Bush years we realized that a lot of the intelligence agencies were operating under their own steam and there wasn't enough coordination, and so I believe this position was created. There's nothing nefarious about it. And the fact that they don't sit in the cabinet doesn't take away from their authority
yeah,
at
but
all.
we ought to
Now,
know.
when
We do
talk
know
about,
who's on the court. If you look, if you
if
check
you're talking about the
carefully enough, you
FISA
can
court,
find out
it was
who the head of the court is and so forth.
The FISA court was established in 1978, and it's to provide oversight so the government doesn't run amok. But to get back to the original question here, Edward Snowden he's a loner, a libertarian. I don't think he's guilty of treason because he has no evident intent to betray, at least that we know about. He believes he was doing the right thing in alerting the American people that this kind of surveillance was going on. What's new here is the extent of this surveillance. I think people understood that this is what the NSA, National Security Agency, does.
Yeah.
It's what it was created to do. And so now he's brought this out into the open, and I think that's fair enough. Let's have a debate,
Well,
see
this
if there
is
are more safeguards.
This is a very nice gloss of this young man's reputation, and I think he's going to be very grateful to you.
Maybe he will be. I believe he will be prosecuted
Okay.
under the Espionage
Okay,
Act,
privacy
however.
no more.
Get a warrant, go after a terrorist or a murderer or a rapist, but don't troll through 1 billion phone records every day. That is unconstitutional. It invades our privacy, and I'm going to be seeing if I can challenge this at the Supreme Court level.
Senator Rand Paul wants to challenge government spy programs to determine whether they are constitutional. The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution says this, quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated," unquote. We now know that the NSA gathers data from billions of U.S. phone records and also vacuums, so to speak, the databases of 9 of the largest U.S. internet companies, including Microsoft, Google, Apple, Yahoo, and Facebook. Under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that's FISA, FISA, and Sections 215 and 702 of the Patriot Act, this data collection is legal. And many political figures disagree with Senator Paul, including Mike Rogers, congressman, fellow Republican, former FBI special agent, and chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Chairman Rogers says this.
The National Security Agency is not listening to Americans' phone calls, and it is not reading Americans' emails. None of these programs allow that. As a matter of fact, the Patriot Act, and that part of that 702 says it is expressly prohibited by law that you can read and wholly surveil domestic email traffic in the United States.
Question, who wins on this issue, Senator Paul or Representative Rogers? I ask you, Susan.
I think Senator Rand Paul wins on this one. People are walking around their houses covering up the little cameras on their computers right now. He just cited the Fourth Amendment in that clip you showed. Talk about an unreasonable search. You're in your house looking at your computer, and the government can be watching you. And at least according to Snowden, who said they can tap in and look at your emails, listen to your phone calls. That's just by definition unreasonable.
How about the whole backlog in the computer?
The whole idea of feeling secure and using your own telephone and your computer while you're in your own home
Does it have to
is
be real
the heart
time,
of this
or
issue.
Can you go right into your computer and see what's there?
Well, that's what the claim is. And we don't really know. They're using this big word, the metadata word. That we're just gathering this stuff up. We're not really looking at it. How do we know that? How do we know that? How do we know what anybody is looking for? And how do we know who is looking at it? We have government contractors now who seem to have access to a lot of personal things belonging to millions of Americans. They're not even really directly working for the government. They're government contractors. It seems like there's no real control over the information coming in and who has access to it, and that is a big security issue.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think you're leaving out something essential, which is that the head of national intelligence is basically in national security has basically indicated that dozens of terrorist attacks have been interdicted as a result of the information and intelligence that we got out of that. And given the world that we are living in, we've got to see whether there's a way of preserving that access. Now, they are not listening to conversations. They're not looking at the material. It goes through a special court with independent judges, and the Congress have approved it. And so this is something in this modern day and age that we're going to have to find some way of dealing with, which is the levels of terrorism that we have never before experienced.
That's right. You have smart people creating algorithms, so you look for patterns when you collect all of this data.
It doesn't feel like they're looking for algorithms.
Excuse me, when you buy something online, do you notice that you get lots of ads related to what merchandise you were looking at? Of corporations are doing the same sort of snooping.
That's a
So
lot
you want to
different.
cover the
Government
camera
watching
on your computer. You should have done it a long
Yeah.
time ago.
John,
Hold on, please,
All right.
Pat. I want to get this in to show the extremity to which this subject moves. Metadata.
To capture all these emails, internet searches, phone records, and other information in industry argot called, quote-unquote, metadata, the NSA, based in Fort Meade, Maryland, has built a 1 million square foot data center in Utah at a stated cost of $1.2 to $1.7 billion. The Utah Data Center stores and captures data in yottabytes. 1 yottabyte equal to 1 trillion terabytes, or 1 quadrillion gigabytes, or 500 quintillion paper pages of text. If those pages were stacked, by the way, one on top of the other, the stack would reach to the moon and back 66 million times round trip.
Let's move that out a little bit. Let's take an example of metadata. Amazon's Kindle reports back every page you read, how long it takes you to read it, what passages you underline, and everything you read on Kindle. It's as if CEO Jeff Bezos is snooping over your shoulder. Is that an invasion of privacy?
No. Look, this enormous data exists.
Yes.
I mean, Amazon.com, I order all these books, and then they send me, as Eleanor says,
Right.
books just like it. Would you like to buy this? It exists. Verizon, all these other things, and it goes into this huge pool, and NSA can access it if they've got a reason to believe someone is connected with terrorism, then they can go into it.
Then they can also turn it over to a law enforcement agency.
Look, John,
then they can go in.
The data
With the
already
warrant.
exists.
There is no privacy.
The question is, can NSA access it? It already exists.
It exists, and if they want to go further and target in on someone, they have to go to this court
Exactly.
and present enough evidence
FISA
that
court, FISA.
the FISA court, and get essentially what amounts to a warrant.
This is the
Look,
mystery court. We don't know
the
who's
fact
on it.
that we can have the luxury.
But we do know who's on it if you really want to look.
There's
The fact
one-
that we can
do.
have the luxury of having this conversation is because we feel pretty safe, and maybe we shouldn't.
God
There's
bless
still
America.
an enemy
God
out
bless
there.
America.
There's still
I
an enemy
share
out
that.
there.
I mean,
And-
they penetrate every part of your life. Your medical records, too, I imagine.
Look, we have been
Is there
in a-
anything that cannot be found in the light of these
It is
developments?
possible there is very little that
That's
cannot
right.
be found. But let me put it this way. The bombs that went off in Boston the day of the marathon, okay? There was information and intelligence that we might have been able to find out about these people in advance, and we didn't do it as it happened, okay? We're in a different kind of world today, and we have got to find a way to protect ourselves. Otherwise, this society is going to break down in ways that we can't even predict. This is, it seems to me, it's a moderate price to pay for the level of
and
security
you don't
we
mind
now
that the
know.
Fourth Amendment to the Constitution is shot full of holes.
I don't
No,
know
it's
that I
not.
agree with you
What
on
do you
that.
mean it's not?
Who is violated
All right.
whose
Well, no,
rights?
Let the lady in here.
It is
Susan,
a balance here, protecting the country versus giving up your rights to privacy as an American.
nobody's-
Giving them
Everyone
up.
is so willing to just say, okay, fine, government, look at me, take all this
But
data,
no.
I trust you. I mean, really?
John,
Really?
John,
Really, Pat? I
whose
mean-
Fourth Amendment rights have been violated? Look, if somebody went into my computer and got my email, I'd say, you SOB, I'm going to sue you. But it hasn't
I'm going to
happened
answer
yet.
all your
Not
questions
yet.
in a
These
moment.
Is there the potential?
If you-
Yes.
First
if
of
you
all,
can-
let's get to the exit question. If our government holds on to that much of our personal data, is that in itself an erosion of our constitutional right, namely to privacy under the Fourth Amendment?
No, because the data already exists, John. They just move it from here to there.
That's right, and they look for patterns. And I want to quote David Simon, a former reporter. He's the creator of The Wire on HBO. He likens this not only just to try to find the needle in the haystack. This is trying to identify the needles before they're placed in the haystack. This is what this information makes possible, and we don't want to surrender that. And you know, there have been no documented abuses.
Oh, I feel better now. Susan.
None that we know of. That's the thing. This thing is so secretive, and we're also willing to
It's
accept it. We don't even know what they're
would
doing.
you do,
with it.
Susan? Destroy all this information?
It's not much of a
I
secret
think
anymore.
We've got a big dragnet
How
out
do
there.
you
Do we need that
reaffirm,
dragnet?
reestablish, reroute privacy in this country?
tell-
How do you do it?
I don't feel that my privacy has been violated, okay? What I would feel that my privacy has been violated if I was in a subway and the goddamn and the thing blew up, okay?
Are we
Sorry.
going to have to treat this
I
videotape after
it
the
just
show?
came out, you know
Bring
why I
that
get.
Well,
Right.
so safety rules.
Well, yeah,
Well, of
this-
course, of
you
course.
want to change the whole mood of this country?
Change-
Have a couple of terrorist attacks that go off without the ability to
You're
stop
so
them.
trusting in this
You
thing.
don't
They
realize
weren't
how
even
much
able to
commercial
track down these
value
guys
this
in
has.
Boston,
They
despite
can
their
tape- they
reams
can
of
now-
information.
They can taper to all of the elements of your appetite, vast as they may be.
All right, John?
I'm a vegan, so they're not going to have much
That's
to
right.
work with.
Issue 2.
You want to change the whole mood of this country?
Change-
Have a couple of terrorist attacks that go off. You want to change the whole mood of this country?
Change-
Have a couple of terrorist attacks that go off. You
sure.
want to change the whole mood of this country?
Change-
Have a couple of terrorist attacks that go off.